Hello and welcome to another episode of Podcast on Fifth Ave. I'm Taylor Haas, you're Danny Shirey. We're off after a 2-week break. That was my fault. I just took some time off, went to both Taylor Swift concerts here, but we definitely have a lot to talk about. We're recording this Friday evening. We just got back, both of us, from Nashville. I was there for the awards, and then you came, and we were both there for the draft. We're going to talk about everything, some other news, some news that just came out today. But we're going to start with the draft. The Penguins prospect pool, obviously very weak. This doesn't solve that. You just wrote about that. But before I guess we get into talking about just like the prospect pool, we should go down the list of players they took this year in the draft. And first round pick, 14th overall, the highest pick they've had in since Derek Pouliot. At number 8, it's a long time. They drafted Braden Yeager out of the WHL, the Moose Jaw Warriors. If people were following along with my series of profiles I did after talking to guys at the Combine, I wrote, I think it was 15 or 16 total. The very first one I did was Yeager. So the Penguins are very interested in him from the Combine. They took him out to dinner, so this isn't anything new. It wasn't like all their favorites are off the board, but no, they went above and beyond with this guy from the beginning. I know the reaction from fans maybe not that great, because I think people wanted more of like swing for the fences, like high risk, high but very high reward kind of guy, maybe like a Gabe Perreault. Braden Yeager isn't that. He's very, I feel like he is a safer pick, reliable two-way center, but he also does have that kind of lethal shot. He can play wing too. He has played wing. He definitely prefers center though. Lethal shot. The only real weakness that stands out is that he needs to get stronger. I think he's something like 170 pounds, 5'10" or 5'11", depending on different places you look. But he's 18. A lot of kids you look at who are in that draft eligible kids, so many of them need to get bigger. So that's not necessarily a huge knock, but just what do you think of the Yeager pick?
Yeah, I wasn't as high on him, as definitely not as high on him as the Penguins seem to be. I don't think it's like some outlandish or horrendous pick. I mean, he was on a lot of draft boards. He was in that, anywhere from like the 8 to 20 range, depending on where you were looking at. So that was right in the thick of where he was kind of expected to go. I would have liked to see them take a little bit of a harder swing there and maybe go for someone like Gabriel Perreault. Of course, he ended up falling all the way to 23 or 24, going to the New York Rangers. The one thing with Perreault is that he produced a lot with the US national team development program last year and actually set the single season point record for the program. Super skillful player, but the knock on him is his skating, and that's a little bit of a concern. Now you could go back and forth there, but then you start to think about it a little bit, and you watch the two, like if you watch Perreault play and then you watch Yeager play, and Yeager just looks, in the way he plays, he looks like he would fit in really well in the Penguins system. I know people always freak out like, oh yeah, they don't need any more Smurfy little guys, but like he just has that. I don't even know how to describe it. He just looks like he would fit in, and he fits the Penguins mold that Mike Sullivan loves to have. The guy can shoot the puck. I mean, he probably had one of the top 3 or 4 best shots among this draft class. What's interesting though, is that this past season, his goal total actually dropped quite a bit from the previous season. But you're expecting that to go up considerably in your draft year. But the caveat there is that he told us that he focused a little bit more on playmaking, and as so, it was evident in his assist totals. His assist total shot up in a big way. I don't know that
25 to 50.
Right. So that is a very real thing. Obviously, I don't know that he projects as some great playmaker in the NHL. But with that being said, I think that over the course of time, if he starts to lean into his greatest strength, which is his shot, There is something there. I don't know that I project him, and I'm not some professional scout, so I take my projections with a grain of salt, but I see him more as like a middle six winger who can fill the net. I don't necessarily know that I see him driving play a whole lot. But obviously these guys are 18. It's going to be 3-4 years before we see him in Pittsburgh if he does end up getting there. But all things considered, I think the Penguins could have done a lot worse with that pick.
Yeah, he did acknowledge, I mean, when he spoke at the Combine, he talked about how the focus on playmaking. He also did acknowledge, like, I also do need to just shoot the puck more. Like, he wasn't really making excuses for, like, the goal totals going down. He said his shot in particular, he likes to model his shot after Nathan McKinnon. He said just the way he, like, jumps into it and the quickness of the release. At the draft, when we talked to him, like, after he got drafted, he said he models his overall game after Sidney Crosby. When he was asked that question at the Combine, he didn't say Sid. He said Patrice Bergeron and Jonathan Toews. Number one, because just they're good two-way play, because that is his game. But then also he talked about how good they are in face-offs and how because that's just such a big thing for him, obviously, as a center. But he does have that ability to play wing too. He played wing growing up until he got to Moose Jaw WHL. So we might see him come in as a wing. A lot of guys like that, if they play center, but they have the ability to play wing, when they get called up, for the first time, they don't break into the NHL as a center. Even if they project to be that eventually, it's just much easier. Like Teddy Bluger was that way. Teddy Bluger, obviously a center, but when he played wing before. So when he came in to Pittsburgh, he started as a wing. Moving on from Jaeger. So they didn't have a second round pick. Thank Ron Hextall, Kyle Granlund for that. They had a third round pick. They took a defenseman, Emil Pianiniemi, out of Finland.
Say that 3 times fast.
All right, Pianiniemi. He split the last season between. He plays for the system Carpet in Finland. He split the season between their main team in the top Finnish league and then the junior 20 affiliate, the junior league. He just looks to be more of a project for sure. With him being in Finland, I think it's nice that he's going to be able to develop against grown men in the top league over there. That's always a massive plus when you're drafting a player out of Europe, that you get to see them have that experience playing against grown men. But he has decent size already. He's 6'2", 175 pounds. Obviously needs to put on a little bit of weight before he makes the NHL, but that's not the biggest concern right now. Penguins director of amateur scouting, Nick Pryor, said that Pianiniemi moves well, really good with the puck, smart, gets you out of your own end clean. His transition game is very good, and he has the size to go with that. We were really excited where we got him. He said his favorite player growing up was Pavel Datsyuk, so not a defenseman at all, because of the skill. But he said right now a defenseman he kind of looks up to is Miro Heiskanen with the Stars. He thinks his skating and puck moving abilities are pretty similar to Heiskanen. It's hard to say, was this a reach, or was this did he drop to him? Because you look at the rankings for guys in the mid-range and I mean, some major rankings don't even bother this late in the draft, third round. But the ones that do, it's just so varied. You can only watch these guys so much. So they got him at number 91. You look at where he was ranked. Hockey News had him 76. The lowest elite prospects had him 135. Elite prospects had him 135. The lowest was McKeon's Hockey at 191. All over the board. So it's hard to say. Is this a good pick with the third round? Because who's to say?
Yeah, statistically speaking, I know the NHL E models, which are the statistical models that take into account a player's production relative to their league. And they also take historical data from previous development patterns from every skater who's ever been drafted to come up with probabilities on whether that player will become a regular NHL player, meaning they carve out at least a 200 plus career game career for themselves, and they will also get a probability as for their chances to become a star in the NHL based on their point production. With that being said, it's a little bit murkier for defensemen, especially defensemen who don't put up a ton of points, because obviously that's a little bit different, and defenders can impact the game positively without putting up points. With that being said, a lot of those guys in the NHL who do a lot of those good things that don't put up a lot of points, they did still put up a decent number of points, when they were playing junior or before they were drafted or before they came over to North America. So that's something to consider there. But I will just say I'm a big fan of this pick because, one, you never really know what you're going to get after you get out of the first round anyway. But as the Penguins were making their selections, I was trying to do some very brief scouting of these players. And the very first game I went to watch of his, he scored a goal. It was like a brilliant goal off a set face-off play. He jumped right into the slot behind the defensive coverage. As soon as his team won the face-off, he was hit with a pass and buried it. He proceeded to do the Evgeny Kuznetsov bird celebration as he skated right in front of the opposition's bench, and it looked like he was kind of hollering at him. So I really like the energy with that pick, the energy on that play. And, again, we're talking about a 3, 4, 5 year timeline here on someone like this, especially who seems like their talent and skill is a little bit more raw right now. So again, time will tell.
Yeah. Next pick was in the 5th round. They took Mikhail Ilyin, forward out of Russia. He spent half the season in the KHL. He's in the KHL, and then he was in the MHL, which is just like KHL's junior league. So I to get a guy who had pretty regular KHL time all the way in the 5th round seems like a pretty big win. And I mean, you want to talk about timelines, but drafting a Russian is hard because you never know when they're going to come over. You can't really bring him over for the summer. He's not coming to development camp. Development camp, by the way, July 1st through the 3rd. He's not coming. That's not necessarily a big just the geopolitical situation. It's because the KHL teams, the guys over there, they're with their teams throughout the summer. They're doing workouts and camps and stuff over the summer over there. So typically, you even when there's not a war in Russia, you're not seeing the Russian guys come over for the summer camps regardless. But as far as the timeline goes, the way most of this works, where you draft a player, it depends on where they come from, their age when they were drafted, what league they're coming from, and what country. And you have a timeline from when the draft happens to when you have to sign that player or you lose their rights. That doesn't exist with Russian players drafted out of Russia, because the NHL and the Ice Hockey Federation of Russia do not have a transfer agreement. So that means when you draft a player out of Russia, you keep his rights forever. The Penguins still own the rights to Alex Pacioretty, the goalie who played a game with them in 2000. They just last forever. So he can take as much time as he needs. But I know you wrote about Ilyin. Just what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, he put up 2 points in 26 KHL games, and they were both assists, and everybody's like, oh, great, they got some dude who can't produce. Let's consider the fact that this 18-year-old who probably started the season and it wasn't even 18 at the time, had carved out a role for himself on a KHL team. That the KHL is one of the best leagues in the world, and there are plenty of grown men in that league. So the fact that he was able to get 26 games in the KHL, regardless of whether he produced or not, is encouraging. He did produce down in the MHL pretty well. Not much of a shooter or a goal scorer. He prefers to he's more of a pass first guy. He likes to hang on to pucks. He's actually really, I believe he has some pretty legitimate playmaking upside. He makes some pretty good slippery passes, these hook passes that he's just really good at changing the angle and finding lanes that might not have been there otherwise. Again, he's a 5th round pick. He does have some limitations. He's not the greatest skater in the world, but some of the scouting reports that I read on him did say that he's very engaged all over the ice. He's responsible defensively, and He's not the biggest guy in the world, but he uses his body really effectively to shield the puck, which only augments his playmaking ability. I don't know. I struggle here to go too in depth as we get further into these later rounds, because it's like you really have like this much of an opinion on these guys, but just trying to provide as much insight as possible within reason before we just start repeating, oh yeah, it's 4 or 5 years before we see them and they could be good, they might not be, but there's something there. He needs some work though.
Yeah, in the 6th round, that's the next pick, they took a Cooper Foster, forward prospect out of the OHL. He played for the Ottawa 67s. The good, play on both sides of the puck. But what Nick Pryor, the Penguins, liked about him, they're talking about his untapped offensive potential. So they see something in him and they think he could put up more points than he was putting up in the this past season. And he's kind of, looking into him, it seems like he's kind of a late bloomer. Like he didn't, this past year was his first full year in the OHL. He didn't make he didn't make Ottawa 2 years before that. Like a lot of these guys coming in, they have 2 full years OHL experience. He didn't. But the thing it's the untapped offensive potential. They're talking about how he mostly played a bottom 6 role, mostly at center. He can play wing as well. I looked through like all the line combinations of Ottawa he used last year. Towards the last like maybe month or so of the season, he was pretty regularly up on Ottawa's top line on the left wing, but he seems to be more of a center. Any thoughts on Cooper Foster?
Great name.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. The rankings, again, we're in the 6th round. There are not that many ranking services ranking guys this deep in the draft. I mean, so the Penguins got him. The number pick they got him was 174. The 2 websites that actually did rank him, it's like plus minus 50 where they got him. Draft Prospects Hockey had him 126. FC Hockey had him 224. FC Hockey actually had a scouting report on Foster. They call him an effective two-way forward who excels in the details of the game. He might not have standout skill or elite skating ability, but he compensates with strong off-the-puck play and high compete level. Offensively, he's a capable playmaker and shooter, although he might not excel in open space. So that's Cooper Foster. And then to close it out, the Penguins had 2 picks in the 7th round. Neither of them were their own. The first one was the one they got in the Jared McCann deal. The other one was a pick that last year the Penguins had a 7th round pick. They just traded it with Florida that year for a pick this year. That's just something you see when, I don't know, Florida wanted, they saw a guy they liked in the 7th round. The Penguins are like, we don't really feel too strongly about any of these guys and we want to go home. Let's just trade. So they had 2. And they took 2 more Finns. So they have half their draft classes finished. There were 15 total Finns drafted of the 224 players. The Penguins got 20% of them. So these Finns, the first one, they got a winger, Emil Jarventie? No, it's Jarventie. Emphasis on the first syllable in Finnish. And Nick Pryor did acknowledge, like, we didn't go out looking for Finns. It's not like they see anything special about Finnish players and the way they develop. He said it just worked out that way. Jarventie, he played all over last year. He played 15 games in the top Finnish league. Saipa is the team. 19 games in the second tier professional league with Kuvi, and then 21 games with the Ilves in the U20 junior league. So he played a lot of the season against grown men at different levels, and then a lot against his own level of competition, his own age group. When he was in the junior league, he had no trouble scoring, 8 goals, 11 assists in 21 games, but that really fell off when he was at the pro level. He had 1 goal in 15 games in the top league, and then 4 goals, 3 assists in 19 games in the second league. Big reason for that is probably that he's small. He needs to get bigger. 5'10", so not too egregious, but he doesn't have the height. But he also doesn't have the strength to make up for that. He's only 167 pounds. Dauber Prospects, pretty major prospect site, they called him an undersized but quick and electric winger. His feet are fast and he has a great motor, but his stride lacks power. And while his first steps are very quick, he doesn't possess the greatest top speed. Jarventy has good hands, notably in tight spaces, but he often relies too much on his skill and still needs to learn when to simplify his game. He flashes great playmaking ability at times, but is very inconsistent, and he also makes a lot of questionable decisions with the puck. Pryor called him undersized winger, offensive-minded. They like his shot and his play in the offensive zone, and really with him it's just about working on his defensive game. And obviously he also needs to get bigger. A little bit of a pedigree here. His brother, Roby, was drafted in the second round by the Senators in 2020. He's been in the AHL the last years. And their dad, Marty, retired in 2016. He had a 22-year professional career, mostly in Finland. There's a year in Sweden in there, and then 1 year in the Canadian system where he played one game in Montreal, and then the rest of the year in the AHL. But I mean, anyone you're getting in the seventh round is obviously going to be flawed. So, like, okay, yeah, he needs to get better in his own end, and get bigger. But for the value in the seventh round, this seems great, especially when you look at the rankings. So, I mean, the actual pick number they got him, 217 overall. TSN's Craig Button had him 62. Draft Prospects Hockey had him 69. Flow Hockey had him 93. Smart Scouting ranked him 96. And FC Hockey had him 100. So it seems like this guy slipped to the Penguins. What do you think about
that? Yeah, like you said, there's obviously something that caused him to fall all the way to the seventh round. But with that being said, I can't ignore those rankings either. It would be different if someone had him at like 65 and someone else had him at 250 or whatever it may be. But the fact that several rankings have him in that cluster right there, no, this doesn't mean that he's going to become guaranteed to become an NHL player or even an impact guy. But once you're getting that late into the draft, you're looking for value, and it seems like they definitely got it out of him.
For sure. The other Finn they got, big defenseman, Kalle Kangas, 6'4", 205 pounds. He's 18. He's not like an overage or first year of eligibility. Another Finn coming from Finland. He's never played professional hockey yet. He's only been at the U20 junior level. He's in Joker system. This past year, he had 1 goal, 8 assists, 40 penalty minutes, and a +15 rating in 42 games. Another guy, you look at the rankings where the ones that actually did rank him, Draft Prospects Hockey had him 165, FC Hockey had him 230. The draft only goes up to 224. They got him 223. Prior, he said Kalle Kangas is a big defenseman, extremely hard to play against. His skating is going to need to improve. He can move the puck. He's hard to play against. So he's one of those guys that makes it harder on the other team. So it sounds like he's hard to play against because he said that 3 times. But the size, you can't teach the size. You might as well take a swing at this guy and hope he can pan out as an actual hockey player, because they could definitely use a big defenseman in their system.
Yeah, it's a 7th round D-man who doesn't produce and is described as being hard to play against. That very well may be the case, but I also know that terminology is used when teams acquire defensemen who just aren't good. So we'll see where it goes.
Might be hard to play with too. Kalle Kangas. Kalle Kangas.
Yeah, great name. I love the names of this draft class. There were a lot of good names in this draft, though.
Oh, there's like Marcel. That was
great
first
name.
Last name. I forget who took him. There's a Yegorov. Yeah, a lot of crazy names. You don't got to get into the names. That's it for the draft class. So, development camp coming up. Jaeger's going to be there. Pieniemi's going to be there because he actually did come to the draft. Cooper Foster's coming. Russian Mikhail Ilyin obviously not coming. The 2 Finns, we're not sure. The last 2 Finns that we just talked about, Jarventy and Kangas, we don't know if they're coming. Pryor wasn't sure yet either at the draft because neither of them came over from Finland for the draft. And with development camp starting July 1st, that's very short notice to bring them over. Logistically, so we'll see. We'll see. Be interesting to see if they speak English. I feel like most Finns typically do pretty well. Pieniemi, obviously very not comfortable with it. It's still maybe better than Pussinen. So
he's a man of few words.
Man, yeah, maybe that he probably speaks English fine. He just doesn't want to. But anyway,
no, I thought he spoke fine. He just didn't have a lot to say.
That's another, I think, a Finnish thing. They just don't like culturally. They just don't talk a whole lot. Either way, gotta brush up on your Finnish. Downloading number of Finns coming into the system, but we spent way too much. 25 minutes on the draft class. We're gonna take a break,
and we're gonna talk about an actual NHL player.
Imagine that. Just stay with us. All right, we're back. The Penguins actually made a trade before day one of the draft. Before we get into that, very few trades across the NHL at the actual draft. I feel like the draft is typically chaotic with the trades. Didn't see any. Wasn't that busy. The Penguins made a deal before.
I think it was the first time since 2007 there wasn't a trade.
Yeah. Like the picks. There were a couple trades involving like just picks, like swapping picks. Right. The Penguins made one of those with the Rangers. They swapped the 90th pick for the 91st pick, and then for doing that, the Rangers also tossed in a 7th next year. So you see a lot of stuff like that, but not picks of trades of players this year. But Riley Smith, the Penguins got Riley Smith from the defending Stanley Cup champion Golden Knights, and it only cost him a 2024 third-round pick. And the specific third-round pick is the one that they got from Vegas in the Teddy Bluger deal. So the trade is Teddy Bluger for Riley Smith. When you look at it that way, not bad. Vegas's motivation, it's a cap dump because they're up against the cap. Kyle Dubas talked about how the Penguins might go bargain bin shopping like this, where you take on deals from players from teams that are looking to shed salary, and that's what this is. Riley Smith, he makes $5 million, 32 years old. The Golden Knights, they just went and gave that money to Barbashev, so that's why this happened when it did. But you didn't.
Before we get into that, I have to make a comment on that Barbashev deal. Yes, he was amazing in the playoffs. That much is true. And he'll probably be fine if the Golden Knights continue to stick him on the wing with Jack Eichel. With that being said, the guy was playing out of his mind relative to what he's done for his entire career. 5x5 for him is going to look crazy in a year and a half. I promise.
When the salary cap goes up like normal, maybe it doesn't look that bad.
That's considering that the cap is going to go up. I am bearish on Ivan Barbashev. Okay. Anyway, okay. Riley Smith is why we're here.
Yeah, quick couple basics on him before you talk about Smith. 32 left-handed shot, 6'1", 185 pounds. He has 2 years left on his current contract, $5 million cap hit, so like no salary retained by Vegas. He had a 12-team no-trade list as part of his contract this season. That is reduced to a 10-team no-trade list this coming season. And then after that, it goes down to an 8-team no-trade list. So you wrote about Riley Smith, his actual skill set and what he can bring. Just what are the Penguins getting here?
Yeah, so one of the things that Smith excels at is his play off the rush. He's typically one of the top contributors in regards to rush offense, whether it's taking shots off the rush or making passes off the rush that lead to shots. And I found that especially interesting because 2 seasons ago, the Penguins were one of the best rush teams in the NHL, not only at creating controlled zone entries, but then creating chances off of those controlled zone entries, and obviously the rate at which they scored off the rush. Last season, it was interesting because over the offseason, Hextall was like, yeah, we want to make our transition game a little bit better. But then what ended up happening was the Penguins were nowhere close to the rush team that they were the previous season. In fact, they were toward the bottom of the league in the rate at which they generated chances off the rush. So I think the Smith acquisition will help them in that regard and will complement whoever he's playing with. I have to assume it will probably be with Evgeny Malkin. I asked Mike Sullivan at the draft if Smith's rush play was, one of the biggest things that was enticing about bringing Smith in. And he said, yeah, absolutely. Part of that's a big component of the game that we want to play. And Evgeny Malkin's obviously pretty skilled off the rush as well. The thing, and I don't want to get too nuanced here because we don't know what's going to happen with Jason Zucker yet. Both Sullivan and Kyle Dubas said that the door isn't closed on Jason Zucker coming back even after Smith has been brought in. But one of the things I think, in an overall value standpoint, I don't know that Smith and Zucker are entirely different. But the thing about Zucker is that he was really good at, and is really good at, creating chances for himself and scoring, but he's not the most adept playmaker in the world. And I have a feeling that the Penguins want to lean into Evgeny Malkin's finishing ability. So I have a feeling that it was appealing to them to not only get a guy who could contribute individually off the rush, but is also going to be able to set up Malkin, because whether it's Brian Rust or Ricard Raquel, neither of those guys are high-end playmakers either. So I think that they wanted to get someone who can make a little bit of magic happen off the rush with Malkin as well. Just a little more on Smith. One of the things I found interesting is that both Sullivan and Dubas mentioned his defensive play. I think there's a little bit of a disconnect there. I honestly can't say I've done enough of a scouting report on his work in the defensive zone. What I can say is that over the past 3 seasons, his defensive impacts at even strength have graded out as replacement level. Now, again, defensive skill, whether that be blocking shots, intercepting passes, whatever it might be, that doesn't necessarily always translate to good defensive impacts. But I think what they might have been referring to a little bit more is his work on the penalty kill, because despite his replacement level impacts at even strength defensively, he actually has been very, very effective on the penalty kill. And I think that that's something that is, rather enticing for them, because they need a guy who has that versatility. He can play on the second power play unit and produce there. The Golden Knights like to use him as a trigger guy because he likes to take a lot of one-timers. He's very, very good at getting the puck off his stick in a hurry. He can one-time and one-touch the puck, even if it's in, unideal spots. So I like the fit. I think that if they can find a way to bring Zucker back too, that would be awesome and give them a lot of flexibility as to what they could do with their line combinations. And they might be able to optimize Crosby and Malkin's deployment by having another option like Smith being able to go on the penalty kill and being able to move him around the lineup. So I think it's going to be a good addition. I am a little concerned that he is 32. But again, you look, what are you shaking your head for?
Because that's something a lot of people said, like, oh my God, he's 32, he has 2 years left. What, 2 years from now, is any of this going to matter? Like, the Windows make those going to be bad. But I don't think he was putting up points on a cup. He played until June. I think he handled it pretty well if you look at what he did playing.
No, absolutely. And what I was just about to say is that you look at the free agent market, they weren't going to get a player as good as Smith at a $5 million cap hit. So that's something to consider. However, I just, something about wingers who aren't high end, that are over the hill and over the age of 30. No, I shouldn't say over the hill, over the age of 30. You see it all the time. These middle six guys, and Smith is a middle six guy at this stage of his career. You see it all the time where these guys just fall off a cliff. So that's something that's always in the back of my head with regards to these acquisitions. That being said, I think Smith's skill set might be able to help him prolong that a little bit further. And at the end of the day, I really like the acquisition.
Yeah, I mean, and I asked Dubas about does this have it affect Zucker at all? And like you said, he said this certainly doesn't close the door on Jason Zucker. Now, we're recording this Friday. Free agency opens at noon tomorrow. By the time you're listening to this, we might know exactly how things played out with Zucker. But he said he was pretty clear that the Riley-Smith trade is just about adding depth. Maybe if they can find a way to move out Mikhail Granlund, then he steps into that role on the third line. I don't know what Mikhail Granlund's role is. He never really had one. He had a couple. He didn't do any of them particularly well. If Riley Smith comes in and replaces Mikhail Granlund on the third line, that's pretty good. But we'll have to see. Speaking of Kyle Granlund, a little bit to talk about there. A couple of other free agency type things to talk about. We're going to talk about the next segment. We're going to take a break first, so stay with us. So Friday was the day that the last buyout window closed. So the NHL, you can buy out players. You can only do it certain times a year. There's only one buyout window for everybody. The second buyout window maybe opens up. The way the second buyout window would open up, you have to have a player so one of your RFAs elect salary arbitration, and whether it goes, it's either if it's settled or awarded. So if you settle just by them electing arbitration, if you settle before then, or if you actually go through the arbitration process and it's awarded, then a second buyout window opens up, but it's only for players who make over $4 million. So why are we all talking about this? We've talked about potential buyout candidates. Obviously, none of them got bought out. The Penguins didn't use any of their buyout. They didn't buy anyone out. People talk about Jeff Petrie. The term Jeff Petrie has left. That never made sense. People talk about Jeff Carter because they don't understand that you buy him out, you don't get any cap relief because he's on a 35-plus contract. The one that really made any sense at all was Mikael Granlund. He has 2 years left, $5 million cap hit. The way a buyout's done, it's paid out. So you pay him 2/3 of the remaining salary, and it's paid out over double the length of the year of the years remaining. So it would have been over 4 years. The cap it varies. The penalty varies from year to year. Next year it would have been at its cheapest, just a little over $800,000. So that's a ton of savings. They didn't end up doing it. Not too much of a surprise. Kyle Dubas in his pre-draft press conference was asked about any buyouts coming, and he said he doesn't really like buyouts. The one time they did use a buyout in Toronto was there are weird situations where sometimes you make a buyout and it gets you a cap benefit, like it adds. So you don't have that penalty. So that's the only time they did it. What he spoke about is that there's more creative ways to unload problematic contracts, is the way he described it. Like you look at Patrick Marleau, they traded Marleau to Carolina so Carolina could buy him out. Stuff like that. So I mean, a buyout's still pretty, that's a severe kind of choice to make, just like the ramifications for 4 years. Mikael Granlund wasn't great after the trade deadline. It was also a very small sample size to make such a drastic decision over, I think. Maybe they still try to move him out this summer and free up that $5 million. If not, he's not going to be worth the $5 million regardless, but maybe he bounces back to the level where it's not an issue and he scores. It's hard to score less, I think, than he was doing after the trade deadline, but maybe he does have some sort of a comeback season. Thoughts on not buying out Mikael Granlund?
I have made it abundantly clear on this podcast and in my writing that they should have just bought him out. I wrote it the night that they acquired him. Even in a best case scenario, Granlund playing at the peak of his abilities is not a good fit for the Penguins and what they need. I would have moved on from him. You said it in the last segment. It's not going to matter in 2 seasons what Riley Smith's cap hit looks like or whatever. Why would it matter that they're paying 1.83 or they're on the hook? Geez, I cannot talk. The couple days in Nashville really got to me. If you guys haven't been able to tell by this point, the first year of the buyout, the Penguins would have only been on the hook for $833,000 of a cap hit for him, which would have cleared over $4 million in cap space. Well, if you're trying to maximize next season as your competitive window, I don't see how you pass that over. And again, with the cap expected to go up here in several years, I really don't see the 1.83 million cap hit that they'd be on the hook for afterward. I don't really see that being all that big of a deal. And I know everybody's like, oh yeah, well, why would you do that with Jack Johnson coming off the books? Jack Johnson's buyout finally coming off the books. I'm trying to maximize this window, and I feel like clearing the most cap space, which unless they're going to find a taker to take him on at a $5 million salary for 2 more seasons, which I really don't see that happening. I mean, maybe Chicago, they're handing out crazy contracts, $4 million to Corey Perry, $4 million to Nick Foligno. But at that point, if we're talking about retaining salary on Granlund, like retaining $2 million for the next 2 seasons, at that point, why not just buy him out? Because you're probably not going to have your competitive window open in that second season anyway.
Yeah, they could still try to move him out. Even if you know, like a deal like Vegas just made with the Penguins. Moving on from Granlund, another deadline on Friday, busy day. Qualifying offers were due for restricted free agents, so these aren't actual. I mean, they are like contract offers. A player can just sign the qualifying offer, but this is just to retain their negotiating rights, so they don't become an unrestricted free agent when free agency opens July 1st. So the Penguins made qualifying offers to Drew O'Connor, Ty Smith, Jonathan Gruden, Philip Hallander, Philip Lindbergh. Now, the last two, quick. Hallander, Lindbergh, I know you feel like you look at the comments, the replies on social media, and they're like, you idiots, they signed in Europe. Because they did. Hallander signed a 5-year deal in Sweden. Lindbergh, I believe it's a 2-year deal in Finland. This just retains their North American signing rights in the event that they do want to come back at some point. Hallander, it's a 5-year deal. That's a long time from now. You retain if you do this, you retain their rights until they turn 27. For Hallander, I believe this would be this would be until he's going to turn 27 while he's in Sweden. So it would be like if for some reason he doesn't finish his contract in Sweden and wants to come back. Lindbergh, it would just be for I believe it's 1 year after this deal he just signed expires. No downside to doing this. It's not like it takes up any space or money or anything like that. Just a formality. No reason to spend too much time talking about it. I did like we both wrote about like what to do with the free agents. Obviously, Drew O'Connor, bring them back. I did one focusing on the minor league guys. You focus on the NHL guys. Ty Smith, obviously, you want to keep him in the system. Jonathan Gruden, he was one that I was like, yeah, you try to bring him back to just. He didn't look out of place when he came up during the season. He's not ever going to be like a super flashy prospect. The comparable in Wilkes-Barre was always like a Teddy Bluger type of player with his defensive abilities, his PKing. Not kind of a boring prospect, but I guess one you need because he can be kind of reliable. If they're
he's not the kind of guy that's going to push for a roster spot or anything, but he's a serviceable option if they're, you know, light on forwards and they need someone to come up and play 6-7 minutes on the fourth line. He'll be fine.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, no problems with any of the qualifying offers they made. You look at the ones they didn't make. First, there were 3 in the minors, all defensemen. And when I did my thing, looking at the options, the free agents down there, I said, yeah, you pass on all these guys. Colin Swoyer, he was one of the this was just his first year. They signed him last year. They signed 6 free agent prospects, undrafted or unsigned lasst year. Colin Swoyer was one of them. Defenseman out of Michigan Tech. He didn't have a great year. Healthy scratch, in and out of the lineup. When he was in, he was a third pairing. Really didn't show anything. We were talking about this before we recorded. He was like the best player on the ice in that prospects challenge game in September against the Sabres prospects, maybe with the exception of Nathan Legray, who also didn't have a great year. So that just shows how much weight you can put into those kinds of things. But yeah, Swoyer gone, free agent. Peter De Liberatore, if you're like, who's that? It's because he was barely in the system. That it was the guy they got in the Teddy Bluger trade. Really didn't seem his first game. It was the AHL Outdoor Classic. He scored a goal. Oh my God. And then he just kind of really didn't do anything after.
Should have retired after that game.
Really didn't do anything after that. He ended up finishing the year in Wheeling. They sent him down. Even when they got him from Vegas, he had split the year between the Henderson Silvers and their ECHL affiliate, Savannah Ghost Pirates. What what named that organization with those
It,
teams?
it wasn't even that he split the season. He started the year out in the AHL and they got demoted. So that is an important caveat there as to the outlook of Peter Diliberto. I can't Nashville. Yep. I can't do it. I can't do
this
it.
This podcast is brought to you by the Miranda Lambert Bar. Peter Diliberto, right? Yeah, this isn't like he was not the return in the Teddy Bluger trade. No. The motivation in the Teddy Bluger trade was a cap dump. Now they did use that on Mikhail Granlund, so it wasn't that great. But if you look at it, it is Teddy Bluger for Riley Smith, as we talked about. Pretty good trade. Diliberto, that's a wash. Other defense prospect, they're letting go Josh Maniscalco. Zero surprise there. He was another one that I was like, yeah, you don't bring him back. At the time, he was like a very like big. It was a really hyped up signing. Out of ASU, he was a sophomore when they signed him. He left like it was like the COVID delaying the college season. That's kind of what led him to leave early. But like so that was under Rutherford. They had been trying to get Maniscalco for a little while. They just had to kind of talk him into like leaving school early. Never worked out. I mean, 3 years. The first year, that was like the shortened COVID season in Wilkes-Barre, the 2021 season. He was in Wilkes-Barre the whole year. I think he played 8 games. Healthy, just healthy scratch. Which I still don't know why they never sent him down to Wheeling. I guess they thought like whatever he needed to work on. It sounded, you talk to like JD Forrest, Wilkes-Barre's coach, and you ask really about like what's going on with these guys and like Maniscalco when he's not playing. Especially in the minors, the coaches are not going to like really rip on like these guys' weaknesses. They kind of like skirt around it.
It just means they're not good.
Yeah, he just wasn't good. It sounded like he just kind of had issues just following a system. Offense, no issues. That was always like that was kind of why he stood out at ASU. Play on the other side of the puck, like really non-existent. And he is a defenseman. And then so barely played during the COVID year, just kind of practiced with the team and watched the games. And then, not this past season, the one before that, he was in Wheeling most of the year, came up a couple of games. He was putting up a ton of points in Wheeling, but again, not really a lot on the other side of the puck. Now, this past season, again in Wheeling, pretty much the entire season, he did make kind of major strides on the other side of the puck. Started being one of their better penalty killers too. That's something he was never doing. But again, that's in Wheeling. Not enough to earn just another contract. When I'm talking about they hyped this guy up, Mario Lemieux was making pitches like because they're courting Maniscalco, trying to get him to sign. Mario Lemieux was personally calling Maniscalco. Mario Lemieux played a pretty major role in that too because that's when Austin Lemieux was playing at ASU. So Mario saw Josh Maniscalco a lot. And he's like, that guy, Penguin, didn't work out. The one player that didn't get a qualifying offer that's a little bit of a surprise is Ryan Poehling.
Mm-hmm.
Now this doesn't preclude them from signing him. Sometimes they do this with the guys so they can't elect arbitration. And also because when you make a qualifying offer, it does come with a raise. So maybe if they those are two reasons why a team might avoid making a qualifying offer, but they do still want the guy back. I'd like to see Ryan Poehling come back. I know that people talk about the injuries throughout the year, that he was in and out of the lineup most of the year. I can tell you the injury situation is not something that I'd be concerned with. Knowing what it is, it's not something that's like a chronic. So I don't think that's an issue. It's not a chronic injury that kept him out. So I don't know. I'd like to see him come back. Great piece for the third, fourth line when he was healthy, I thought. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I still feel like this might have to do with health concerns. I mean, it's not like he has this glowing potential arbitration case if it were to get to that point. He missed a good chunk of the year. He didn't put up a ton of points or anything like that. So I don't know if that does have something to do with his injury. I mean, regardless, I'm with you. I think he'd be a fine depth piece for the Penguins next season, whether it's on the fourth line, on the wing, or playing center. There was a point last season, even when Poehling was dealing with a bunch of injuries, that I suggested the Penguins move on from Bluger and usher Poehling into his role. He plays with a lot of pace. He's not the most skilled guy, but he's shown that he can put the puck in the back of the net a little bit. And I think he made some pretty good strides on the penalty kill as well. Not a spectacular player, never gonna live up to the expectations he set from his NHL debut when he lit the world on fire. I don't know. It's interesting, like you said, the door is not shut on him coming back, but this is it's a little suspect to me.
Yeah, little interesting. We'll see what happens with him. Last Marino Lambert now. Last piece of news I wanted to touch on. I covered the NHL awards in Nashville. I like how they do that this year. Awards in the draft in the same place, so it's easy to cover. Kris Letang won the Masterton. Zero surprise there. Very deserving. I mean, the other two nominees, crazy seasons too. Clayton Keller, he had fractured his femur. The May. Was it May? No, it was March. Coyotes didn't play in May. In March, 6 months of rehab, and then he played all 82 games and, tied the Coyotes team single season point record. Great year for him. Stalock, Blackhawks goalie, he in 1920, that season, the 1920 season, he got COVID and he got myocarditis from it. So he didn't play in the NHL for 2 years, and he also had like a vision problem and concussions. He dealt with a whole slate of things. But I mean, Kris Letang, the stroke, in a span of 4 weeks, he had a stroke, he broke his foot, and his dad died. And then you also figure he's what is he, 35 now, 36? Just, and for him to have the year he had, I think he finished tied for 10th in average ice time per game, his overall fitness level. The Masterton, it's the sportsmanship, dedication to hockey. There's no better pick, and it's pretty cool to see the way the NHL presented it this year. They had, each team was invited to bring someone out to introduce the guy's story. So they come out. The Blackhawks and the Coyotes have their team doctors out there introducing, Stalock and Keller's stories, and the Penguins picked P.O. Joseph. And P.O., like, we talked to him after too, and like his hands were still shaking. It was like, he said it's easier to go out and block a shot than it is to go out there on the stage at the NHL Awards and do what he did. But he said he would do anything for Kris Letang. So happy for Kris, happy for P.O. to get through that. Happy for Alex Letang, who is always the star whenever he tags along with his dad for these kinds of events. Obviously Alex Letang, Kris's son. He's 10, obviously a big hockey fan. Kris said that Alex almost asked Connor McDavid for his autograph in the bathroom. And being on the red carpet was so cool because like Kris is, the whole family walks the red carpet. Kris is signing autographs, and then you see like Alex is off to the side signing autographs himself. Like the fans want Alex's autograph, and then like at the end of the red carpet, like we interview Kris, but then like Alex is standing there like right next to him in his he got like a tan suit that was apparently a replica of one Chris has that he wears during the season. He did interviews, and then the winners talk after the awards in the podium area downstairs. And so Kris comes right after he gets off the stage. So Alex isn't with him because Alex was in the audience still. A member of the PR staff went out and got Alex, and he bolted into the room and up to the podium. And because it's Kris Letang, there's French-speaking media there too. And the French-speaking media and the Pittsburgh media we're both asking Alex Letang questions, and he's flipping back and forth between English and French, no problem. It is very impressive how he handles the media. He's 10 years old, but I mean, he's been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, if his hockey career doesn't pan out, I bet he can find a career in Hollywood, no problem.
Yeah, he definitely loves the camera. 2019, the All-Star game, that's when Kris brought him, and Alex first started taking over. So I mean, but he would have been 6 then. The way that worked, like Kris is at the podium, and he just brings Alex with him to sit on his lap, and we're asking Kris questions, and Alex just starts answering them on his dad's behalf, and he's like, and like Kris was like, okay, and just picked up Alex, put him on the pod, and just kind of walked away. So we had a full 6-minute availability with 6-year-old Alex Letang. But I don't know. I mean, we saw him the family skate at the Winter Classic. Him and Nikita Malkin spent the whole family skate just skating back and forth themselves, passing the puck back and forth. I don't know. Maybe there's something there.
Dynamic duo.
All right. That's the next core. Anyway, thanks. That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening.
Seriously, thank you for listening to us babble through this, because I legitimately feel like my brain is mush right now. So thank you.
It was a long trip to Nashville, long night last night in Nashville, and then we just flew back to Pittsburgh this morning. So thanks for joining us. We're gonna be back most Friday. Take some time off moving forward. We'll have another episode next week where we're going to definitely have a lot to talk about between what happens in free agency and then my Super Bowl development camp. So looking forward to that. We drop episodes every Saturday. You can, wherever you listen to podcasts, be subscribed. Or if you want to watch this on video, if that's your thing, the DK Pittsburgh Sports Penguins YouTube channel, where we also drop all of our on-location interview videos and stuff. We do live Q&As on there, so if you subscribe, you'll get notified and jump in when we do one. We're going to do one from development camp. So thanks again for listening, and we hope you'll join us next time.